The camera pans across the green benches of the House of Commons, the hall of debate, power and accountability. It's Wednesday in Westminster and tension fills the air. Prime Minister Keir Starmer rises slowly from the front bench, papers in hand, eyes fixed on the Speaker. The chamber hushes. What began as a procedural question has become a defining moment for Britain's relationship with China and for the credibility of the government itself. The Prime Minister begins, his tone calm but deliberate. I'm deeply disappointed by the outcome, he says. We wanted to see prosecutions. He's referring to the collapse of a high-profile spy case, a case that, for months, had gripped Britain's intelligence and political circles. Two individuals, previously accused of espionage on behalf of China, had walked free after the Crown Prosecution Service decided to drop all charges. Now critics are asking, was the government too cautious, too divided, or simply caught between diplomacy and justice? Starmer insists the decision was not political. Under this government, he tells the chamber, no minister or special advisor played any role in the provision of evidence. But then comes the sharper jab, the one aimed directly at his Conservative predecessors. I can't say what the position was of the previous government, he adds, in relation to the involvement of ministers or special advisors. The implication is unmistakable. The failures lie in the past. Across the aisle, Kemi Badenoch, now the opposition leader, shakes her head and rises to respond. Her voice cuts through the din. It is simply unbelievable, she says, that he is trying to say the last government did not classify China as a threat. Her words strike at the heart of the argument. If China was indeed recognised as a security risk years ago, why, she demands, has it taken so long for Britain's legal and security frameworks to catch up? The chamber erupts briefly, murmurs, shouts, applause. The Speaker calls for order. Starmer stands again, this time to announce something that few expected. Last night, he says, the Crown Prosecution Service clarified that, in their view, the decision whether to publish the witness statements of the DSNA is for the government. The acronym DSNA refers to the Defence and Security National Authority, whose testimony underpinned much of the case. Starmer pauses, looks up from his notes and continues, I have therefore carefully considered this question this morning, and after legal advice, I have decided to publish the witness statements. Given the information contained, we will conduct a short process, but I want to make clear that I intend to publish the witness statements in full. It is a bold move, and one with far-reaching implications. Rarely does a Prime Minister commit to releasing classified adjacent material so swiftly, particularly in a case touching the delicate intersection of law, intelligence and foreign policy. But for Starmer, this is about restoring trust in the government, in the justice system and in Britain's democratic transparency. He adds, with emphasis, let me say this, to be clear. Had the Conservatives been quicker in updating our legislation, a review that started in 2015, these individuals could have been prosecuted and we would not be where we are now. The references to Britain's espionage laws, many of which date back decades and were long criticised for being unfit for the age of cyber intrusion and covert influence operations. For Starmer, it is a way to shift responsibility while also drawing a line between his government and those before him. But the debate doesn't end there. The Prime Minister leans forward, voice sharpening. The case did not proceed because the policy of the past government did not meet the task that was necessary. Far from evading, I have said I will disclose the full witness statements that set out exactly what was in the witness statements, exactly what the subsequent statement says, and the allegation that somehow they were changed, that the first and second statements are different, is completely and utterly unfounded. It's a direct rebuttal to rumours that surfaced in the British press just days before. Whispers that evidence may have been altered or at least inconsistently presented, leading prosecutors to doubt their own case. By promising to publish the documents, Starmer aims to silence speculation before it spirals into scandal. Still, his frustration shows. Mr. Speaker, he says, turning to the chair, it's a pathetic spectacle. Instead of taking responsibility for the fact they failed to update the law, the review began in 2015. They took 8 years to change it. Had they done that more quickly, this case would have proceeded. It was their failure, and they're just slinging mud. Badenoch doesn't let it pass. In 2021, she fires back. The previous government's integrated review described China as the biggest state-based threat to the UK's economic security. In 2024, the Minister for Security said from that dispatch box that China poses a threat. But let's leave aside the government. In 2022, the Director General of MI5 classified China as a threat in his remarks. How is it possible, she asks, that the government failed to provide the evidence the CPS needed to prosecute? Her question lands hard. The issue, after all, isn't just political, it's systemic. If China is Britain's foremost strategic adversary, how could such a case collapse for lack of sufficient evidence? Was the intelligence community uncoordinated, the laws outdated, or the prosecutors overly cautious? For viewers, the debate encapsulates something larger than a courtroom failure. It reveals how Britain, caught between economic interdependence and national security, continues to struggle with its posture toward Beijing. Under previous governments, China was alternately described as a strategic competitor and a partner in global challenges. Today, under Starmer's administration, that language has hardened. But the machinery of the state, it seems, hasn't fully caught up. The Prime Minister's announcement to release the witness statements is therefore more than a transparency gesture. It's a test of Britain's confidence. Officials within Whitehall know that publishing such material could expose sensitive intelligence sources or reveal how evidence moves from spy agencies to prosecutors, a process that normally unfolds far from public view. Behind closed doors, senior civil servants and lawyers are working to redact only the most sensitive portions before release. But the Prime Minister's insistence that the statements will be published in full raises eyebrows. Some ask privately, can he really do that without compromising national security? Others, however, see this as a defining act of political courage, an attempt to show that Britain's democracy can face scrutiny without fear. As the Commons session continues, the debate broadens. Members of Parliament from both sides begin invoking larger themes: accountability, sovereignty, and the balance between security and civil rights. The tone shifts between anger and introspection. To some, the case's collapse shows the limits of Britain's ability to protect itself in an era of hybrid threats, when espionage is as much digital as human, when influence travels through social media, business networks, and universities. The case itself, though details remain officially undisclosed, is believed to have involved alleged attempts by Chinese intelligence operatives to gather information from within Westminster. Reports suggested one of the accused had connections to parliamentary offices. When the charges were dropped, the shockwave wasn't confined to London. Allied capitals from Washington to Canberra sought explanations. In intelligence circles, Britain's reputation as a country willing to prosecute espionage aggressively came under question. By late evening, news of Starmer's decision dominates the airwaves. The BBC, Sky News, and international outlets carry his words across the globe. The United Kingdom will publish the witness statements in the collapsed China spy case. Analysts debate what that means, whether it marks a new era of openness or a risky political calculation. Commentators note that Starmer, a former director of public prosecutions, knows the legal stakes intimately. His background gives him credibility, but also pressure. Any misstep could expose him to accusations of interfering with due process. The Crown Prosecution Service, though independent, has made clear that the government alone holds discretion over the release of the documents. At the Foreign Office, diplomats tread carefully. Beijing has so far refrained from public comment, though Chinese state media have already framed the case as proof of what they call Western paranoia. For them, the dropped charges are vindication and evidence that allegations of Chinese espionage are, in their words, fabrications designed to serve political narratives. British officials, meanwhile, prepare for the possibility of diplomatic friction once the statements are published. In Downing Street, aides emphasise the Prime Minister's motive: transparency, not provocation. The public deserves to know why the case collapsed, one advisor says privately. If we don't explain it, others will fill that gap with speculation and misinformation. In Parliament, opposition figures remain unconvinced. Badenoch accuses Starmer of hiding behind legal advice while simultaneously politicising the process. You can't have it both ways, she tells reporters afterward. Either you trust the prosecution's independence or you don't. Her allies argue that Starmer's real aim is to deflect blame for the intelligence community's shortcomings. and to portray his government as the reforming one, even as it inherits problems years in the making. The Prime Minister, for his part, seems prepared for that fight. He knows the optics, a leader confronting both China's shadow and his own political opposition. For him, it's a moment to show firmness, both abroad and at home. As the Commons session ends, the cameras linger on the closing shot, the wide view of the chamber, the buzz of conversation fading into the corridors of power. But the story is far from over. Outside, journalists gather near Downing Street. Commentators from The Guardian, The Telegraph and Reuters all ask the same question. What exactly will those witness statements reveal? Over the next several days, legal teams will pore over every paragraph. The statements expected to detail how evidence was gathered and handled could reshape the relationship between Britain's security agencies and its courts. They may also illuminate the gaps that allowed a potential espionage case to disintegrate in full public view. In intelligence circles, some are already calling this Britain's transparency test. Others fear that once published, the statements could be weaponised by political actors, by foreign governments, or even by the accused themselves. For the Prime Minister, though, the calculation is simple. Credibility requires openness. In his words, far from evading, I will disclose the full witness statements. That sentence now echoes through the political landscape, a promise, a gamble, and a declaration of accountability all at once. As the House of Commons returns to routine business, the echoes of this debate remain. It was not just another Wednesday. It was a day when questions of secrecy, justice and statecraft converged under the bright lights of Parliament. The cameras may have stopped rolling, but the consequences of what was said and what will soon be published are only beginning to unfold. Across London, civil servants, lawyers and diplomats brace for what comes next. The witness statements are expected within days. When they are released, they could either restore confidence in Britain's institutions or ignite an entirely new storm. In the coming weeks, the story will return again and again, in the headlines, on the airwaves, and in the quiet halls where law meets power. For now, all eyes remain on Downing Street and on the man who chose transparency over silence.
We come to Prime Minister's questions. Tom Rutland.
Question number 1, Mr. Speaker.
Prime Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, on that point, may I update the House on the China spy case? I'm deeply disappointed by the outcome. We wanted to see prosecutions.
The Prime Minister can read the beginning. No questions. It is simply unbelievable that he is trying to say the last government did not classify China as a threat.
The Civil Roberts.
Ahead of his party conference, the Prime Minister told the
Under this government, no minister or special advisor played any role in the provision of evidence. I can't say what the position was of the previous government in relation to the involvement of ministers or special advisors. If the Leader of the Opposition last night, the Crown Prosecution Service clarified that in their view, the decision whether to publish the witness statements of the DSNA is for the government. I have therefore carefully considered this question this morning, and after legal advice, I have decided to publish the witness statements. Given the information contained, we will conduct a short process, but I want to make clear I intend to publish the witness statements in full. Let me say this. To be clear, had the Conservatives been quicker in updating our legislation, a review that started in 2015, these individuals could have been prosecuted and we would not be where we are now. I'm happy to answer any questions on this. The case did not proceed because the policy of the past government did not meet the test that was necessary. That is the long and the short of it. Far from evading, I have said I will disclose the full witness statements that set out exactly what was in the witness statements, exactly what the subsequent statement says, and the allegation that somehow they were changed, that the first statement and the second statements are different, is completely and utterly unfounded. Mr. Speaker, it's a pathetic spectacle. Instead of taking responsibility for the fact they failed to update the law so this case could actually be the review, Mr. Speaker, 2015 was the review into the legislation. They took 8 years to change the law. Had they done that more quickly, this case would have proceeded. It was their failure, and they're just slinging mud. Meanwhile,
in 2021, the previous government's integrated review described China as the biggest state-based threat to the UK's economic security. In 2024, the Minister for Security said from that dispatch box that China poses a threat. But let's leave aside the government. In 2022, the Director General of MI5 in November classified China as a threat in his remarks. How is it possible that the government failed to provide the evidence that the CPS needed to prosecute?